Pennington, how are you?
I'm doing all right, Yaman. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. What's new?
Just enjoying a beautiful day where I live and thinking about the vote and all these other fun things. How about by you?
Yeah, same. Do you think it's going to pass? Let's get right into it.
I think it's going to pass, but I got to be honest. I have so many different feelings about this.
Yeah,
I'm
tell
not
us
sure
about
if
it.
it's right or wrong. It's one of the more complex things. It kind of makes the Trump versus Biden vote seem simple, given all the complexities.
Well, tell us what's going through your mind.
He was obviously awarded a package back in 2018 that had ambitious goals, and he met those targets. And by that standard alone, I want to be able to say, give him the money because he deserves the money. And the fact that the courts took it away from him was ridiculous. But there's another part of my brain says that after the vote, after he after the stock rose, he's sort of been taking a multi-year victory lap. And I think he sacrificed shareholders. I think he sacrificed his fiduciary duty. And I'm not sure personally whether or not that sort of meets the standard or meets the threshold of voiding what had already been done. That's my complexity. What do you think?
I want to be a moderator and kind of listen to what people have to say, voice their concerns. Obviously, we had Leo Kagon vote against all his shares, and he has, I think, what, $5-6 billion of shares. Some others have also come out and said the same. I think that it'll pass. I think that it'll pass, and I think that, but I think it's gonna be a close call, and maybe like a 60-40, maybe 65-35 out of the people who vote. I think we're gonna see the largest retail participation in any shareholder vote ever, and it's gonna be glorious. And but I think, I don't want to color the discussion. I have my own views, obviously, but Bull 2035 and then TSLA.
Yeah, here's the way I look at it. If there's nobody in innovation at Tesla other than Elon in terms of at the top. We don't have any names, we don't have any resumes of anyone we can say at Tesla who could actually replace Elon. That's point one. Point two, the PE ratio, if there's no Elon, is probably a lot like Ford. There'll be a great EV company and that's it, which gives you a 10 to 15 PE ratio. Well, that means the stock's going to go down 70% from where it's at now, maybe more. So if you don't like Elon, vote for the package, and then sell your shares when the shares don't collapse if it passes. If you love Elon, vote for the package. I don't see it any other way.
Interesting. I think that's a very aggressive prediction right here. That if the vote doesn't pass, the stock will drop 70%. Let's go to TSLA.
Hey, Alan. So we're voting on the 2018 package, not what happened subsequently with, whatever Pennington said about, him running a victory lap. We're voting on the package that was already voted by the shareholders. So I actually didn't have shares in 2018, but I'm still voting for it because that's what the shareholders wanted at that time. So that should be given to them.
Pennington.
Well, you are correct in the sense of the money should in some ways be given to him. But again, that does not give anybody the right to not meet the standard of what a CEO is supposed to do in terms of maximizing shareholder value. So, yeah, that's difficult. And then in terms of the stock going down by 70%, just in the last earnings call, he came out and said he thinks he's confident that with or without him, FSD is going to happen. optimist to be determined. So the notion that autonomy, which is the thing, the holy grail that shareholders have been hoping for, is all of a sudden going to die, and all that value is going to erode, I think that's most likely premature.
All right. If you have a newer account or a new speaker, the best time to request to speak is now, as soon as we start, because once we have others kind of come in, it gets a little hectic. So let's continue with Machine. Machine, what do you think about this vote that's coming up? Koguan also voted his shares all against the proposal, actually all proposals, it seems. And he grabbed a lot of attention from you know, media, bulls, bears. He seems to be the center of this against vote. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I would tell your listeners that this is the worst time to try to come up and speak, because now I'm here and I'm taking over. And to this issue, I would say I have no idea what's going to happen. Because number one, I don't know how the institutional investors are going to vote. We saw the disparity from the last vote years ago. I don't know how that's going to change. I can't read into their mind. I don't know who's leading those funds. If those people have changed, I have no idea. And then when you get to retail investors, if you stay on X, I think mostly you'll think people are voting for it. But then obviously you have some large retail shareholders who aren't. And then actually, I happened to go on to Reddit today, the Tesla subreddit for TSLA, the investment for the stock. And the sentiment there actually seems very negative on voting for it, which I was a bit surprised. But I guess I don't know. I don't follow that that subreddit. So I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of people here who seemingly are investors in Tesla who are not happy with this. So overall, I think it's just highly volatile. I don't know what to expect, and I'm willing to wait to see what happens.
Magic.
Hey guys, so my 2 cents is institutions are most likely going to vote against it. Public opinion on Elon has turned substantially since the last vote. I mean, just check SNL, or sorry, The Daily Show. They have a segment. So a lot of bad press is going for Elon. So it appears that the institutions are going to vote no. That's just my inkling, just an opinion. But it seems like you can't really base it on the past, because before his image was a lot more harder to pierce through. Now there's a lot of cracks in the armor, at least for the public opinion. So institutions are probably, or, it wouldn't be out of the question that institutions are going to vote no. And you already have a large shareholder, so I don't know. It's tough. And if it votes no, I mean, who knows?
Now, as I mentioned yesterday, institutional investors, you can think of them as active investors, active managers, and also passive managers. For example, Vanguard is mostly a passive investment manager. They have a lot of index funds. Okay, they don't choose between stocks. You have to stay on mute when you're not talking, Magic. Thank you. They don't have to choose between stocks. They kind of just follow whatever the index does. They barely trade except for inflows and outflows out of their funds. BlackRock has both. Okay, they have both passively managed funds, most of their iShares ETFs, and they also have actively managed funds as well.
Okay, so you're saying that Vanguard passive ETFs, they don't vote on behalf of shareholders?
That's not what I'm saying. Like I said to you, you have to stay on mute while you're not talking. So I'm going to move you down since you're not following the rules. And T. Rowe Price mostly have actively managed funds. So institutional investors are not just one big bucket of like the same. They're hedge funds. They're also institutional. They're registered investment advisors. And now retail investors are also not all one big bucket. So it's hard to kind of distinguish, predict what each bucket, what each investor will do. And I mean, even Machine, as smart and intelligent as he is, he was surprised by what Reddit discussions showed, for example. And Reddit is mostly, retail investors, and they're investors, right? Like these are people who actually invest in the stock. So somebody earlier said, if you vote against and Elon leaves, the stock will drop 70%. I think that's extreme. I don't think that will happen, but some people are voting against this, knowing that would happen. Something like that would happen to the stock, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, this is a really interesting discussion. I think this discussion is going to heat up all the way to the end. Let's go with Uziobi.
After the X acquisition, you have to look at the incentive structures. Look at the distribution structures. So that's Reddit, that's Bloomberg. Look at their incentives after X was acquired. Everyone, to Machine's point, everyone would have left Reddit and come to X if they're pro Elon. If they're not, then they're still on Reddit. The same with Bloomberg and I'm going to butcher his name, but Kugan Leo. We already knew this like 2 weeks ago that he wasn't voting, and now Bloomberg sort of hates Elon, and now they're pumping out the narrative because they are the mainstream media that no one's going to vote for Elon. But if you look at it in terms of incentives and distribution, it's clear that if you're on X, you like Elon for the most part. Of course, it's Tesla Q. But if you're on Reddit or you're reading the mainstream media, you might have a biased point of view. What that might mean, I don't know. I think the institutional investors are going to be quiet and they're not going to. It's Elon's job and Tesla's job to be vocal, and Tesla Q to stir up FUD. But the institutional investors will be quiet, and that's what we can expect.
Machine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Reddit in general has a pretty liberal tone, and the people who stay there definitely, are different from people on X. And I haven't observed. I know there's the Tesla investors subreddit, and that's pretty pro Tesla versus this one I'm mentioning. So it's totally fair that those people in this subreddit could have just been some self-hating people, I guess, like who are investing in the stock but also hate the company. I don't know. I find that kind of weird, but it's definitely possible.
Yoda.
Yeah, no one knows what obviously the percentages are. However, it's worth noting that Leo, with 27 million shares, is approximately 1% of the eligible votes out there. So it's not as high as maybe you might think if you just hear about the absolute share count. I think he shot himself in the foot by disclosing his actions so early on, because he's going to activate the retail shareholder base, and a lot of retail shareholders who didn't normally vote is going to take action. And so I think he's likely to be canceling out his own shares just by the incremental people that will vote.
Interesting. Yoda, if you're on the iPhone, would you please turn on voice isolation from the upper right corner of the screen? If you swipe down, again on the upper right, you're going to see mic mode, voice isolation. All right, let's go to Trev.
All right, so Pennington made some pretty good points. Just in my opinion, if you vote no, I think you're simply applying a biased view based on basically emotion of what's to come in the future, not what may have happened in the past. And basically, the past is backed by fact and data, which the fact and the data is Elon met his obligations to Tesla. So if he met those obligations, then I feel like he should be rewarded for those. And whether you like him or not, saying no, voting no to me sounds like you may not want him in the company in the future, which that's fine, but that's not what the question is asking. So that's kind of where my conflict with the matter is, and I'm wondering if anybody has any opinion.
Okay, Machine. So there's a common perception that this vote is about past promises Elon delivered, okay? And we owe him this money. They say this argument goes, Elon delivered on the revenue targets, Elon delivered on the adjusted EBITDA targets, and Elon delivered on the market capitalization targets as well. And even though the stock price has come down, and I think one or two, or the market capitalization targets kind of like got reversed for a little bit, but the fact is, adjusted EBITDA and revenue targets are still there. He's achieved all of them, and that we owe him this money just on that basis. What do you think about that, Machine?
I think it's more nuanced than that for sure, because of the spread of investors and when they invested. People who just bought Tesla in the last few years, I do not believe at all, and have no obligation to vote for this plan. They did not maybe vote for the plan in 2018 because they were not investors. It is not something obligatory to them. And now they've seen, a decrease in share price. They've seen poor behavior from the CEO, being distracted by other things. These things are all factual. And to try to push them that they have to vote yes because what he's done in the past, they don't care about past performance. They weren't there for it. They care about the performance while they were investors. And in their mind, that hasn't been good enough. And they're mostly worried about what people should be worried about is the future. And if you're going to be an investor and you vote no on this plan because you want to punish Musk or you don't want to get the dilution, those are, I guess reasonable takes, but you have to think about what it's going to do to the value of your equity going forward. I think that's the main thing. I wouldn't try to appeal to these people to say, please, you gotta vote for it. Come on, he deserved it. Like he already got it and it was stolen away. They don't care. This is not going to ring true with these
I got
people.
you. All right. Pennington.
So think about Leo. Leo Kogwani owns 27 million shares. Elon buys Twitter. The stock, the noise gets extreme. He just wants an audience. He wants somebody to speak to. And Tesla responds with nothing, no communication. So now here we are, 2024, and there's a vote. And Elon's asking, please support me. Please support Tesla. But you could be a guy like Leo and you could say, I wanted to speak with you then. I wanted something back then. I just wanted a conversation even. You ignored me. Now I'm supposed to stand back or stand alongside you and support this vote? No. So this is so much, there's a psychological aspect to it that's such a serious component to this vote. That's sort of to Machine's point, that cannot be overstated. It's not simply right, wrong, met goals, didn't meet goals. It's much more nuanced.
Okay, thank you. Magic.
Hey, just a quick follow-up question. So if the vote is doing really well, if the voting is doing really well, it seems like they're advertising across Meta and Google, I believe. So that's just a question. I don't know. I don't see a reason to advertise if the vote is doing well. And my question to everybody is this a one-man company? And why? I thought Tesla had a strong, deep bench of engineers. So I'm quite shocked that that this is such a big deal.
Sorry, you're shocked that Elon Musk staying or leaving staying at Tesla is a big deal? Have you not been following the company? Are you new to the company?
I'm shocked that that people are saying that the stock's going to drop 70%. I mean, what
Well, people aren't saying anything. There was one person who made that absurd claim and then dropped off. So I wouldn't take one person's, an anonymous account, what they said, and then paint a whole wide brush across the bull community. So I don't know if you're right for the speaker board. Steven.
So I would ask, what has he done that's worth $56 billion? What has he brought that's unique? What idea? What besides the Model Y rollout was great. Yep. But what else has he done for $56 billion? That would be my question.
I mean, the fact is he delivered on the milestones, right, Stephen?
Yes, sir. He did deliver on the milestones that were set forth by the board, which was comprised of his brother, and which he obviously has control
No,
of because
hold on. The shareholders voted on it. Overwhelmingly, they approved the plan. So you can't just claim it on that his brother decided on these milestones. Like the shareholders voted on this overwhelmingly. Machine. Pennington.
Yeah, Machine says something yesterday in the sense of if this was voted down, Elon could just go and he could start his own company. Absolutely, that's true. Except he would have to start from scratch. If he's dependent on, or as he said, Tesla FSD is going to help with Optimus, he wouldn't have that. He would never have that. And some of the bulls like to point out that Elon is not about the money, he's about the mission. I'm not saying the guy should work for free, but the notion that he's going to sacrifice everything and that the existential future of the world could be just completely changed if he leaves because he's voted down. I think that's such an extreme take that if he's voted, if they vote no, he has a decision to make. But the thought that somebody like of his stature is just going to step up, walk away, and leave because he didn't get the money and sacrifice the future that he's all supposedly all about, again, I think that's too extreme of a take.
Okay. Bull 2035.
Yeah, well, Elon has a lot of futures, right? SpaceX, we could go through all of them. It's not just Tesla. He's got plenty of money, $100 billion is with SpaceX. His equity in SpaceX is, if you believe the latest reports. But in terms of the stock, I'm just looking strictly at the PEs. If the innovation dies at Tesla, which I have to presume it will to a large degree, if that happens, the PE ratio is going to be treated like any other company, like Ford or anybody else. And if you do the math, that's where you get down 70%. Now, so the question I would have for anybody is, who's going to lead the innovation if Elon's not there? Because I haven't heard an answer. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm willing to admit I'm wrong.
Pennington, do you want to take that question?
Sure, nobody knows who's going to lead because obviously there's been a lot of departures over the last year in AI and elsewhere. So the leadership team in Tesla is very different from what it was just a couple years back. But look, OpenAI and Google, all these companies have AI talent. They're developing great AI. Much of the Tesla AI team came from OpenAI. So the answer is we don't know who, but to then take that leap and say, well, if it's not Elon, then it's nothing, given that the assets, given that Optimus, given that autonomy are owned by Tesla, not Elon, and he and only he could drive it forward. I mean, look, those are the two big growth things outside of just the manufacturing the cars. It's Optimus and it's FSD. So if he were to leave, why would those things automatically go away, which would cause the PE value to resemble Ford, which simply doesn't own these assets?
Danny.
Yeah, so the people who think that Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk don't deserve billions for funding their companies, do you think they're more so against capitalism than they are against Musk?
Good question. West Hicks.
Yeah. I never hear those people complaining about LeBron James' salary, right?
That's true. Uzi.
I think the other thing is that Pennington made clear is the problem is a lot of the innovative arms are not part of Tesla, but they are part of Musk. So XAI, SpaceX, a lot of the innovation is driven from these collaborations with the different Musk entities, and bringing them into the Tesla ecosystem is how the value and the innovation is driven. I mean, if you're not familiar with that, I'd recommend reading the Walter Isaacson book. It's 600 pages, but maybe it'll help, advance the conversation.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What specifically in the book are you referring to?
So I can't refer to like a specific instance where like in 2007 or whatever, you know what I mean? I don't know that, but I remember specifically they'd have SpaceX engineers come in to Tesla, help with the, craftsmanship. Oh, one thing was the valves for auto manufacturers compared to, what's it called? Not aeronautics, aerospace manufacturers were completely different. So collaborating between these two companies drove a lot of cost cutting. At the end of the day, I think that new Roadster also is another instance of SpaceX coming into Tesla and driving innovation. And XAI, like Grok having personality, that's not just Grok, but Optimus having Grok's personality. That will be really valuable in the future.
Okay, Yoda.
Yeah, pardon the noise. Elon holds 715 million shares, or approximately $125 billion in value of Tesla. Even if the vote is against share compensation, do you think he's going to tank his value by leaving Tesla, or do you think he'll try to work around the problem?
Yeah, interesting question. I mean, I guess he could sell the shares on Nelly, right? Isn't that possible?
I think he want to protect the market value of his shares because he needs it to establish a colony on Mars. So whichever way you look at, I don't think he will be liquidating his shares just because of a vote. He's accomplished.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
got it. That makes sense. Yeah, he doesn't want. Obviously, he doesn't want. Like his mission is to go to Mars, and Tesla is his way of doing that. And he's not going to let, he's not going to let Tesla go bankrupt. And I think that, I think people are really underestimating the risk of Tesla without Elon. Yes, it is true that Tesla has the assets, has the patents and the IP and the workforce, 100,000 people even after the layoffs, has the institutional knowledge accumulated over 2 decades. But at the end of the day, right now, in the last 12 months, Tesla produced only $1 billion in free cash flow. In Q1, Tesla's free cash flow was negative. Tesla's growth is facing a lot of pushback from special interests, certain groups, such as dealerships, Legacy Auto, and many other groups. And you do need a leader that's going to say, I'm going to do what I need to do despite all that. And there just aren't that many people like that. D. Patel says yesterday's promises to Elon as he met all the milestones is of critical importance. The fact that today's shareholders don't want to honor the deal casts doubt about their integrity, D. Patel says in YouTube live chat. D makes a lot of good comments, actually. I wish that she came up to speak aboard, but I read her comments as she writes them on YouTube live chat. And that also is a good kind of one quick announcement. I am now holding Patreon only live streams, kind of a after party. After this space ends, I'm going to keep these spaces to 1 to 2 hours. They're probably going to go to 2 hours. And following that, immediately after on Patreon, I hold kind of like an after party, half hour, 45-minute summary discussion, and just kind of make sure all the patrons got their questions answered, thoughts heard. Yesterday's was the first one, and today's is the second, the link to which is at the top of their screens. Machine?
Two things. One, I thought I saw Elon liking some tweets today or yesterday indicating people saying that he may leave if he doesn't get this voted through. So I don't know if that's some hinting. And secondly, my bigger picture question is, I mean, everyone's focused on trying to convince retail investors on X to vote one way or the other. And I'm just trying to understand quantitatively if this really matters. Like if you look at the breakdown of the likely vote distribution for retail investors, whatever it ends up being, if it's 50-50 for against or 60-40, is this really going to matter? Is it really down to institutional investors who have much bigger chunks percentage wise? I don't like, to me, it's more about what are they going to do? Can we even try to predict that? Or are we just wait and see?
Yeah, we can try to predict that, of course. Institutional, and I do think that retail investor participation matters. Okay, so according to some estimates, majority of the shares are held by retail investors. Majority of shares are held by retail investors, and they've been very vocal. Retail shareholders have been very vocal. I believe that this is going to be the biggest retail participation in any shareholder vote ever in history. Institutional investors, like I said, divide in two buckets: active versus passive. Active investors usually do their work, especially on a vote like this. They'll decide one way or another. And then passive investors may be more likely to just go with whatever Institutional Shareholder Services, ISS, or Glass Lewis says. They haven't yet said what they would recommend passive investors vote. So there's a lot of moving parts. And I think it's less certain than what we originally thought. Tesla's trying in so many ways to explain their side and convince shareholders to vote for Elon's comp and also the move to Texas. And this vote matters a lot. I put out a poll this morning, and people think that it's going to be about somewhere between 50 to 70% for votes. 50% to 70% of shares will be voted for Elon's compensation reinstatement. All right, Bull 2035.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask because my understanding was Musk has abstained from prior votes, and I think there's been an assumption by some that Musk will be voting for this pay package. I'm not sure we know that. In fact, my understanding is the thought was he wasn't going to be voting. So if anybody has that information, I think it'd be important because of how much Musk owns himself, and that would apply to Kimball and the other insiders as well. Are they going to vote or not?
They're not going to vote. Who said they would vote?
Well, I feel like some of the numbers that we were hearing about earlier, someone said, well, 1%, this one stockholder owns 1%, but then I thought there was a comparison to other total amount. So you really have to subtract then 100% minus everything the insiders own, which I assume would be somewhere in excess of 20%. So we're really fighting over the 80% of that's left, which is going to make it harder to get a high percentage.
Just for fun.
So my understanding from, I think it was Ken, the lawyer, from what he had previously said, was that assuming the relocation of the company to Texas goes through, that they could issue preferred shares more easily, and then potentially Elon could get super voting rights and that kind of thing that would get him more easily to the 25%. So, obviously it's harder if this sort of current vote doesn't go through, but my assumption was the default go-to if it doesn't go through is that they could still relocate to Texas and potentially create some new comp plan and still at least have a backup plan to get him to the 25%.
Thank you. Miro.
So just recently, I think I heard Elon mention that with Starlink expanding the way it is, that he can fund the Mars mission with the Starlink subscriptions and not have to sell more Tesla shares.
Pennington.
Remember, on that note, there's always a chance that Elon could get margin called. So if Tesla stock dips, he's pretty indebted after, I think, to Morgan Stanley with a Twitter purchase. So the guy's incentivized to keep the stock up. And Tesla right now is his only source of liquidity. So if he were to, unless SpaceX goes public, which I hope it does go public only because it's another form of source of liquidity for Elon, then he just has Tesla. So will he abandon it? Unlikely. Could he? Sure. But as relates to institutions, the relationship between institutions and Elon is, it's so interesting because I'm sure they have a very specific type of relationship between institutions and CEOs for probably 99% of big cap companies. And then there's Elon Musk. So we could only speculate how they view him, but it's certainly up for debate.
Magic.
Hey, just wanted to follow up. So it seems like you guys, everybody's, a lot of people on the logic, the thinking that he won't do things out of rage. I mean, he just fired the entire supercharger team just out of a temper tantrum. So if you think
assumption, that's an assumption.
Okay, that's reported by multiple sources. So,
Still.
Okay, so if you fire an entire team and then rehire people back, is that not a mistake?
First of all, how many people do you think he hired back?
I don't think that information is public.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's that many, unless I'm proven otherwise. I don't think they've hired back that many people. And the layoffs are still continuing. And like I mentioned before, Tesla had only $1 billion in free cash flow in the last 12 months. The employee count grew. Magic, you have to mute yourself. Magic, so let's kind of level set here. This is now the 4th time I'm reminding you the rules of the space. It may be beneficial for you to just stay in listening mode for a while and just kind of see how it works. Wessex.
Yeah, I second that. I was in a room the other day with a bunch of bears, and really the foundation of their knowledge, and I've mentioned this before, seem to be just basically salacious articles that meet their worldview. And so repeating things like he got angry and fired everybody is just absolutely ridiculous. This guy's got this, he's too successful, too professional to just kind of like, okay, I fired everybody. That's just crazy. Only a few people would agree with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's shown ability to plan ahead for decades, Anyway. Let's see. Also, Farmer George in YouTube live chat says, didn't Elon get rid of his margin back in December 2022? That's when he sold shares.
I'm sorry, did you call on me?
Yeah.
What were we I just lost my train of thought. What were we just talking about? And I'll remember it in a second.
OZ.
I'm back tracking a little bit because I had hit it for a little bit. So my question is like, who bought the dip to 140? That's the real question, because I'm pretty sure I was acquiring shares a lot at that point, and those were counted when I voted. So if it's Kathy Woods buying because she loves Elon, then it could be perceived as bullish. And then backtracking to what your mom was saying about the special interests, the next 5 years for Tesla is about disruptive innovation, and it's going to be labor and self-driving cars. So if we don't want Elon, you don't want a strong leader, I don't think Tesla is the company for you, because if you consider the possible world without Elon, I think that disruptive innovation point, the future of Tesla is dependent on those two arms, FSD and later on Optimus. So if you consider that world without him, there's really not much more there for you or for myself.
Steven.
So the reason I think that some consider the pay package of 56 billion excessive is because the average U.S. CEO salary is 165,000. Just a statistic I got.
Do you think Elon is an average CEO based on his track record?
No, certainly not. I'm
Okay.
just to put it
So
in a little bit more
that's
perspective.
irrelevant information. Danny.
Yeah, he's a founder, just like Mark Zuckerberg and everybody. So obviously, but I wonder if he leaves. I wonder if we have any insights on if he would do it gracefully, and then the team would stay for the mission, or if we'd see something like OpenAI and Sam Altman. But then, even if Elon loses the package, what I think we're likely to see is an overwhelming support from the shareholders, at least. So I think from all that love from the shareholders, I think he'll be unlikely to leave, even if he loses the package. Don't you? Do you think?
I mean, I can't imagine it feeling good if he lost this vote. This would be a huge, you know, a vote against confidence, I guess. But at the same time, like you said, there's a lot of overpouring of sports on X for Elon from many big accounts, from retail investors primarily, and but I don't think it would matter either way, because he has a mission both on Tesla and SpaceX, and I think SpaceX's mission in a way depends on Tesla's success. So he's going to get it done either way. But I think that it would be an asterisk if he lost this vote. Yoda says in the replies, Elon holds 715 million shares or $125 billion worth of Tesla. Do you think he will be fazed by an against vote? Yoda, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I just think Elon was bluffing the AI stuff as well. Because if you remember those OpenAI emails that were internal, part of their concern was they needed to partner with a company with enough revenue to sustain the compute resources required by any major AI initiative. So if you're Elon, sure, you might be not compensated with this extra 55 billion, but then you require the revenue stream of Tesla to fund any major AI initiative that you want to work on going forward. And so why would he give that up? It just doesn't make sense.
I agree. Wessex.
Really didn't hear everything Yoda said, but I think I agree too. Yeah, I think a lot of people are confusing what Elon said about potentially leaving the company, which is around the amount of shares he held or influenced, and have moved it now over to this vote. I don't believe Elon's ever said anything about potentially leaving. I think our speculation has really, kind of created this narrative. I also think behind the scenes, if you're on the board, you've got contingency plans in place in the event that this doesn't go through. You've already had conversations with Elon that says, look, here's what we want to do for you. Can you confirm that if we do this for you in this vote, that you will remain? And then he said yes. In other words, they're not going to do all this without being certain that Elon will stay. And then secondly, they talked in that same conversation, I'm sure, about what if it doesn't happen? What can we do as a contingency to keep you and make you whole, take care of you? And all that stuff's been worked out. I'm not saying we don't have some risk here, but I going back to the last or the first point, excuse me, is I think it's a fair concern on Elon's part if he doesn't have a strong enough share count, if you will, because when you have activists on your board, they can really change the company. And if we have artificial intelligence that becomes potentially dangerous, and those people can influence the decision of the company to move the AI into or in ways that we don't want, that is a real concern. And I think he made a legitimate point on that.
Can you repeat the last part, which you labeled legitimate concern, please?
Yeah, I think Elon made a legitimate point that if he doesn't have enough influence in terms of share count, that we may have too many activists eventually on the board who can influence the company in such a way that can put AI in the wrong hands. And so he doesn't want the AI to get so powerful that people can do that. I think that's a great point.
What would he do though? What would be his next action?
If what?
To prevent that from happening, you said he wouldn't leave, right? You're convinced that there are many contingency plans in place. So you assign a very low probability to him leaving. But
Correct.
now
Yeah.
you're saying I feel like you contradicted yourself from beginning to end.
Yeah, let me clarify if I didn't explain it well. There's two different points. One is this vote regarding his compensation, and I think he'll stay no matter what. I think we'll work that out. It's a guess on my part. And the second one being artificial intelligence, particularly the robot, becoming so capable that if it gets in the wrong hands, that it could be problematic for humanity. And so he needs enough, share count, if you will, to ensure that that doesn't happen. And I think that's a reasonable point on his part.
Let's say the share count didn't happen in the off chance. You're still saying he would still stay, right?
I believe he will.
And then he would then what? He would just kind of not bring Optimus to that level of intelligence, or what?
I don't know how you would navigate through that, but I think, I think I'd be, he'd have a lot on his plate, right? I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think he'd leave.
Gianni.
Question for Machine and this panel. Does Tesla have a moat in its real world AI that would tether Elon to the company regardless of vote outcome?
What do you mean by Tesla's moat tethering Elon to Tesla?
Is the real world AI that Tesla has with its 6 million robots so unique that Elon would never want to forego that and start all over somewhere else or go to some other company? Is it that unique in that existential for his AI goals?
I mean, anything anybody says is going to be speculation, but let's see what Machine has to say on that. Machine, can you answer that question for Gianni? That Tesla's advancements in FSD, its millions of vehicle fleet, its Dojo computer inference chip in its cars, does it give Tesla such an advantage that Elon would still stay with Tesla because he wouldn't be able to develop AI elsewhere? That Tesla is the path of least resistance, regardless whether he gets paid or not.
Well, I mean, the big picture answer to what you just said is yes, Tesla is the path of least resistance. However, the one area I would say that Tesla has a structural advantage is with FSD robotaxis, because they have a massive data advantage, which is essential in getting these massive models to learn and not overfit. And no other company has that. He can't go somewhere else and recreate that. However, Optimus, that he could go somewhere, he can make a startup and they wouldn't really be far behind from Tesla. I mean, obviously, they don't have the
Wait, hold on.
leveraging.
That means you're saying FSD development FSD does not help Optimus that much.
Well, there's structural advantages to starting with the FSD stack, the way they learned how to train in general. They're using probably some of the occupancy network right now from the FSD stack of V11 and using an Optimus. So there's those key benefits right now that are getting it to work well more quickly than if they didn't have it. But I don't think over a few years that's going to be much of a structural advantage. You're going to need to get more data and compute, and you're doing a lot of stuff in simulation, but Tesla doesn't have a data advantage there. So they do have hardware advantages, learning how to scale things up from volume production standpoint. So there's definitely Tesla still would be the best bet for Optimus. But the difference between doing a startup and sourcing those materials or someone else to build a robot isn't dramatic, I would say, as FSD. Like that's a more dramatic difference, and that's why you see.
Grant.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that there's certainly a chance that Elon would leave Tesla. Just to comment on a few different things that people have said, he's currently raising funds for another AI company, so that's something to keep in mind. And then one thing that I've often heard said, I think it's Elon's defense of why he needs more stock, this idea that he needs to have sufficient weight within the business to ensure that AI doesn't go down some bad path. I have an open question on what that actually means. I mean, I don't recall his exact ownership level right now or like exactly what it gets to. I mean, he's not a majority control type person. The judge in Delaware said he already controls the board. What does this incremental ownership percentage change about his ability to really steer away from a negative outcome? That's something that I've never heard anyone really articulate. So I'm curious if anyone has an opinion there.
Yoda, would you like to address that question? Machine.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I don't know how much going from 18% to 25% is such a huge deal. I think he just wants more shares, even though he said he'd be fine with just the voting rights. But they're not really, that's not really possible. And he acknowledges it's not possible. So I think he just wants more shares. And, he shouldn't have sold his shares if he wanted more shares.
Well, I mean, Grant, 25% is much greater than 18%. Yes, it's not control shares, but obviously going from 18, 19, 20 to 25 makes it less likely that he will lose control eventually. Like, remember, he did go through a bit of a shakeup in PayPal times. If you read those, he was ousted. If you read the Ashley Vance biography, and I guess with that background, it's not that surprising that he's, especially with something like AGI on the line, it's not that surprising that he's focused on that. Grant?
Yeah, I mean, I hear it. I think it's fair in some sense, but it's like kind of soft. I mean, I feel like a nice benefit of that argument is that he also gets $50 billion. So I think we can, have different opinions on it. That's totally fine. Um, and another question I wanted to ask, I'm not sure if the group's spoken about it already, but it feels like the probability that this comp package goes through is kind of dwindling in my mind. I saw the one like South Korean guy who's a huge shareholder say he's voting no. I think a lot of the major institutionals, that Wall Street Journal article from yesterday, it sounds like voted no the first time around. I can't imagine anyone changing their mind to flip to a yes. There might be some people who voted yes who are now going to vote no. Like, what's the current odds, perspective from this group on how likely it is that he gets a yes vote there?
Well, the retail ownership percentage of the company is much higher today than it was in 2018. My understanding is that retail shareholders are overwhelmingly by Elon, standing by Elon. The person you mentioned owns, 1% of shares. If somebody isn't happy with Elon, they probably sold their shares. So I put out a poll earlier today. I asked people, what percent of shares do you think will be voted for Elon to reinstate Elon's compensation? And the results came in between 60 to 70%. And I would argue that's probably that's my expectation as well. Grant?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is always that a lot of retail investors aren't going to vote. I mean, obviously, the people on this space are talking about it around the clock, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have voted. I've definitely seen people on Twitter who are voting no. It's just, there's like the question of turnout, I guess, like any vote or election. But I feel like I don't know. I just, I don't see it happening. I understand it's probably not a popular opinion in this space, but we'll see.
Machine.
Yeah, I would just add, don't count on all retail voters voting logically for their shares. I mean, I do agree. I would think the logic is if you own Tesla, you believe that the highest valuation Tesla can get in the future is with Musk at the helm. However, there's many people who aren't going to vote for Joe Biden in the election because he's not liberal enough, and they're going to end up giving the election to Trump, who definitely doesn't align with what they want. So there's a lot of that sort of logic or lack of logic going around that could apply to Tesla too.
Yoda.
Yeah, sorry. The key for Elon to own more than he does now, and let's say reach theoretically 25%, is because of minority shareholder protections. In many jurisdictions, when you get 25%, you have the ability to block certain majority decision or certain major decisions that require what's called a super majority, which is 75% or higher. So essentially, by having 25%, that would allow Elon to block some of those major decisions.
That's a good point. That's good to know. And assuming Musk knew that before, years ago, doesn't it seem really stupid to sell a chunk of shares to buy Titter if you're that close to owning that percent of the company? I mean, come on. Like, it's fine that he did it, but don't act like this guy, oh, please, he's begging on the side of the street. Please give me some shares. I need voting control. You were close to it and you chose not to. So now you got to live with that decision.
Can you repeat what Tesla Yoda said?
I mean, not exactly, but basically, if you have 25%, then you don't need majority control on some of the votes to get things through. Like you can be a minority shareholder. I didn't hear the whole thing exactly.
Well, you say it's a good point.
Well, it sounded like a good point, what I heard while I was chewing. I was eating a cookie.
Yoda, can you repeat your point, please? Why is 25% such a critical thing? Like, so different from 20%?
Just hang on, I'm gonna get to a quiet spot.
Grant.
Is that still the case with Tesla? I feel like they were trying to get it removed a while ago. I mean, I was just looking at former shareholder meeting, proxy votes and all that. Is it still the case that that's true, or have they removed that?
Yoda.
All right, yeah. So basically, in the key to 25% is that there's something called minority shareholder protections. So in some jurisdictions, when you have a significant minority stake, often around that 25%, that can provide rights and protections to the shareholders. That's the minority around 25%. And the key one includes ability to block majority decisions that require what's called a super majority vote, which usually is 75% or higher. So, for example, a key decision around Tesla acquiring another company that actually needs more than 50%, that needs 75% or higher, right? So, in those cases, if Elon doesn't agree with that type of a decision, he can technically just block it himself against what, even if everyone else was agreeable, he can actually have control to block those decisions. So imagine an AI decision that's detrimental to his worldview, that's something he could do block with 25%.
Interesting. That's the first time I've heard that. So we can maybe explore that a little bit. If Ken is in the audience, maybe he can come up and give us some color. If anybody else has information on minority investor rights and in what ways 25% threshold is critical to those rights, please request to speak. Let's explore this a little bit more. Uzi.
I would push back on Machine's point on poo-pooing on Elon for liquidating Tesla shares to buy X or Twitter, because he knew he was going to have, or at least so as he thought, he was going to have $50 billion in cash coming in, which was the liquidity. So if he, and that was already confirmed, but then it got overturned because of, in my opinion, a corrupt judge. So in Elon's world, everything is really consistent. And going back to 25%, I think he assumed that would be resolved by now, but then again, the corrupt judge. So the vote, it really does matter.
Machine.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he would have 25% even with that comp package. That would have upped it, right? With like to 22 or something. I thought it was still below 25.
Grant.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the different types of voting rules, but I think it's less likely to be a function of the jurisdiction you're in and more likely to be a function of the operating agreement that, the owners of a stock or business have established. I mean, I work in the VC world. Voting is important, preferred shares, non-preferred, like all that sort of thing. It's likely whatever Tesla has decided to do. I don't think it's necessarily like a jurisdictional type thing. It looks to me like, because I'm Googling it, it might be the case at Tesla that supermajority voting requirements are 2/3 rather than 3/4. So, yeah, I just don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I just don't really buy the argument that, like, oh, well, if I don't get these shares, Tesla's going to breed an AI that takes over the world. It's like, feels like a flimsy rationale for wanting more money. But that's just me. If someone has, like, I would be curious. I don't actually know where to find the details of those requirements for a public company, but that's what I'm seeing. I'm curious if anyone sees the 25% somewhere.
Thank you. Jake McCombs on live chat says, does anyone know if any major Tesla shareholders also own SpaceX? Nobody who owns a substantial amount of SpaceX would vote no on the comp package because it would destroy their relationship. And Ken says Ron Barron owns both Tesla and SpaceX. Any others that you guys know of? Maybe Tiro, Fidelity. Some retail shareholders on both. I think another major milestone is when ISS and Glass Lewis announced their recommendation in the coming maybe days, if maybe a couple of weeks. Uzi.
I think also Kathy Woods. I'm looking at the fact sheet so I can confirm. Actually, I don't see it. So,
I mean, Kathy was definitely voting for Elon's comp, right? There's no question about that. Let's see if there's another comments on live chat. Machine, somebody earlier. Yeah. Well, see, here's the thing. Like Kevin King says in live chat, ISS opposed the original package, so I can't believe they would change their opinion now. But it's not the same thing. Like we said earlier, he achieved all the milestones. He achieved all the revenue, adjusted EBITDA targets, market cap milestones as well. So, it's more about do you think he should get paid for what he achieved and you agreed to it already? So I'm really curious what these proxy advisor firms are going to say. Uzi, and then we're going to change topics.
Kathy Woods invested in SpaceX on October 31st, 2023.
Okay. We had the bear coming up again. Just for fun?
Just quickly on the last topic, I am seeing some Morningstar prior article about some proposals failing previously because they required a supermajority of 66.7% of the vote. I guess there may be a 33% requirement.
Thank you. Grant?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think a supermajority, as Tesla's operating agreements define it, is probably 2/3. But it's also interesting because they were trying to remove that a couple times, but failed to achieve the 2/3 to remove it, which is interesting.
I mean, with Elon 25%, his brother and other confidants, obviously, they're going to get to 33.3. Like, does anyone doubt that? Okay, Magic? Magic, you have to unmute yourself for us to hear you.
Hey, so it appears that this is more of a question of, I guess it really boils down to how the institutions are going to vote and what that looks like. I think my question is that I initially posed was, if the vote is doing so good, why the advertising? Why the advertisement? It doesn't seem like a confident move.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's definitely not. And they don't know how it's doing, right? They kind of have a feel for things, but they're meeting with institutional investors. Retail investors are showing their support, or if they're against OMX and everything, but it's not done until it's done. So they're covering all their bases. I mean, they're going all out with the websites, some advertising. They're going around the world with meetings, institutional investors. Elon's reposting retail investors, showing support and everything. So going all out, covering all their bases. I mean, can you blame the guy? Wessex.
I just want to add one point, kind of addressing that last question and my comments earlier about having contingency plans. The board may be limited in their ability to have attractive contingency plans. So that may be, the emphasis on the advertising now and so on might be to simply look, let's just nail it so we don't have to worry about that other stuff.
Brent.
Yeah, I don't know if this is too inflammatory a question for this space, but I'm curious if the vote fails, and separately, if Elon were to leave Tesla, I'm curious what people think the stock price reaction would be.
Machine.
If it doesn't go through,
Yeah.
At least a 20% decline. I think I predicted 30% before. I think that's what I'm still sticking with that.
Do you think so? I mean, despite all these contingency plans?
Absolutely. The stock is highly valued for its earnings. And a lot of that, we try to debate on what it's valued for. That's something in the future. Maybe it's only a little bit of robotaxi, not much Optimus, but a lot of future growth. There's a lot of that is, and for better or worse, pinned on the leadership of Musk. And if he doesn't lose this, if he loses this vote, this compensation package, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty, and people are going to sell off to reduce risk, the risk of him leaving. Because if he leaves, then the share price is going down 50%.
I agree with that. I think if Elon Musk left, the share price would go down 50%. And it's going to play out in stages. There's going to be a vote. If the vote passes, then fine. If it doesn't pass, then we're going to go to the second stage. Did they move to Texas? If so, then it's probably fine. But that's a more hairy path, and then even if neither passes, does he stay or does he leave? So all of those are going to play out in the next few months with all this macro uncertainty too at the same time, and FSD improving simultaneously. So a lot of different factors impacting the stock price in the next few months for sure, just for fun. Just for fun.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
was saying, yeah, I disagree. I think the stock price would double if Elon leaves because, as my idol Gordon Johnson says, Elon's a fraud. And so Tesla would be unleashed from all of these fraudulent schemes.
You gotta lay on the sarcasm thick when we have new speakers, new listeners. Fred, welcome. How are you?
Pretty good, thank you. I was wondering, you guys' logic behind, like, what leads you guys to believe that Elon will leave if he does not get the comp package?
Well, I think the general thought is that he wouldn't leave. Did
Okay,
anyone?
but that's not what was being discussed just a minute ago.
I don't know. Did anyone say that he would leave even if he didn't pass machine?
No, I think Fred's listening in French. Fred, I cooked cock of wine the other day. Have you heard of that meal? That's
Coq
how you
au
say
vin,
it.
you mean, yeah.
Yeah, cock of wine. That's a weird name, but in English, what I said was that if he leaves, then the stock price would go down 50%. I didn't say he would leave. If he loses the vote, which has a much higher chance of happening, then there's uncertainty, right? It's going to be uncertainty in the market around whether or not he would leave. And there's some uncertainty instilled by Musk himself because he's the one who in January tweeted about maybe having to leave. And then he just liked a tweet from someone yesterday, I believe, who said, if the vote doesn't pass, then Musk deserves to leave. I don't know why he liked the tweet, for some other reason, maybe not that part. But those things instill some uncertainty.
Fred?
No, I get that. I get that you said might leave. I'm not saying I don't think anyone has the perfect insight into Elon's head at this point. But you guys are suggesting it. Like, I mean, you guys love this term, like fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Like, you are bringing this idea that he might leave if he doesn't get the vote. And I've seen no evidence of that. Like a light tweet, it's very light. When in fact,
let me just kind of correct one thing. It's a very diverse group, and even in this speaker board of about 7, 8, 9 people, we have 2 bears, couple people who are in the middle, and couple people bullish. So it's a wide spectrum, and that's probably the most bears don't even request to speak. So lots of diverse. I really want to stress this, underline a lot of diverse opinions in this space.
am I a bear?
And no, you're not. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like for a couple other people, actually didn't even count you as a bear, Fred. Yeah,
that's a win.
Yeah,
but I'm asking for the people that do think that he might leave, even if you think it's a
so let me just
50% chance or something.
summarize. In the last few days, we've been discussing this. The general consensus is that after all the contingency plans, if everything goes wrong, then he would still stay, is the most common view in this space. Okay.
All right, that I can agree with. Yeah.
Okay.
What do you mean by what would be everything going wrong exactly?
So let's say the vote failed, and the Texas vote failed too, that they can't offer preferred shares to kind of give them a bit more control than the number of shares would indicate. Then on top of that, he still decided not to stay, which I think all of these are minority probability. So when you multiply them, I think it comes to about like maybe 1%, 2% probability that this all ends up with him leaving. But But if anybody else has other views, please request to speak. Okay, we're going to go to Machine, Magic, then Grant.
Yeah, I think, Fred, you come from a history. I read your website for many years, which oddly you've misspelled electric. I don't know why you would do that. But I think there's a lot of accusations against you personally, which are unfortunate, about FUD. So now I think you have PTSD and you're projecting it on us. And that's not fair, man.
Grant.
Yeah, I think so. I have a coffee bet open at 33% odds that Elon is not the CEO of Tesla in 12 months. I feel like that's a reasonable bet.
First of all, excuse me. If the bet is not with me or made in this space, it's not a coffee bet. It's a coffee X bet, like TED Talk, TEDx Talk. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. I did not know that. But thank you for, I don't know, whatever. You had some role in it, but it was not an official bet. That's all good. The only thing I'd say is that there's another form of risk to Elon leaving the business that I know is not popular to discuss, but that's a function of the ongoing criminal investigation into Tesla and a lot of the claims that have been made around autonomy with these cars. I mean, there is a chance. You can debate what it might actually be, what the probability looks like, but if he gets charged with something, even if it's not like you're going to jail, there's also a chance that the board has a lot of pressure put on them by investors, and there's just a outside chance that he's not CEO. I do think that the stock will move down if he doesn't get the vote and if he leaves. But I do think it's really a function of how bulls choose to behave. So a question, if I can ask, is like, I'm curious what the balance in this room is of people who would continue to be excited about Tesla based on all of the progress on autonomy versus people who would say, without Elon, the stock is one I have to sell. Because I think there's a story that a lot of people are aligned on around autonomy, FSD, Optimus. I'm just curious, like, are half of you selling if Elon leaves, or is it 99%? I really don't know.
I mean, I don't mean to speak for other people, but I think I know my audience pretty well. And in this space, I think majority of people would sell if Elon left. Fred?
So that would indicate that people are investing into Elon rather than investing into Tesla, right?
Definitely. Yeah. I think most retail shareholders are investing in Elon. And I would say even a few of the institutional investors are investing in Elon.
Yeah, I think that's a misunderstanding from people. Like, I'm the first to give Elon a lot of credit for what he's done with Tesla, but I mean, I have a lot of insight into the company and a lot of its leaders, and obviously there's been quite an exodus of talent in the last month, to say the least. But he's responsible for the vision and for driving a lot of innovation. But man, there's so many talented people at Tesla that they are mission driven. So for me, I invested in Tesla for the mission, and Elon is not necessarily the mission. On the contrary, in recent years, I feel like he's done a few moves that are anti-mission. So I don't think maybe in your space for sure. Maybe in your space is going to be a lot of people, like, I don't know, about 99% that would sell for Elon, but I think a lot of people would buy too if Elon was not there.
Let me make a statement, and let's see if you agree or disagree with this statement. Okay. If Elon left, Tesla would become Rivian in 3 years.
You're gonna have to explain. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, look at Rivian. Their market capitalization is basically their cash balance, negative gross margins, and they're headed toward bankruptcy. And I think that Tesla could get into that situation in, let's say, 3 to 5 years if Elon left.
Why?
So the following is very important. So Tesla, so these are just facts, right? Tesla made only $1 billion in free cash flow in the last 12 months. In the last quarter, negative free cash flow. The reason is because this is a very capital intensive industry. You really make your money once, like after you ramp your production lines and you smooth it out. If you lose even like 10, 20% of the volume, you quickly turn negative in your free cash flow. And it's really hard to reverse that. And Rivian never made it to escape velocity. And now they're going to see their R1S sales decline, just like their R1T sales declined quite a bit. EV9 is a great product. Cybertruck is coming to volume production, and you're going to see what happens to Rivian's income statement and balance sheet. And in my opinion, they're going to file for bankruptcy in about 3 to 4 quarters. What Elon brings to the table, in my mind, is like, aside from all innovation, which everybody agrees on, right, is an incredible cost control to levels that I've never seen. He can go into a company like Twitter and, despite all the unpopularity that he got, lay off, 60, 70% of the people. He can come into Tesla and say, I'm going to lay off all the I know it's a hot button topic. Okay. I'm going to lay off 20% of the people, 20,000 people. And he knows, the guy obviously knows he's going to get a ton of pushback from legacy media, on Twitter, even from Tesla fans who've been with the company for more than a decade. He knows all this. But my understanding, okay, I've never met the guy. My understanding is that he truly believes this is 100% necessary so that Tesla doesn't go bankrupt. Tesla doesn't become Rivian.
I can agree with most of what you said, but my main issue with this is like, all right, but at this point, Elon has set up Tesla that it will fail if it doesn't achieve self-driving. That's pretty much how he set up the company over the last few years. Do you agree with that?
It wouldn't go bankrupt without robotaxis, but it would also not be a good investment at this price level without robotaxis.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. The valuation of it is definitely completely attached to achieving self-driving. And do you think Tesla then doesn't achieve that if Elon is not there?
Well, so wide adoption of robotaxis is going to be more than just technological achievement. So let's say they achieve technological capacity of, let's say, 5, 6 nines. It's very reliable, even as ADAS people are using, etc. But to roll it out across the world to a scale that's going to matter, do it efficiently at low cost, before Waymo or others do, is going to require someone like Elon.
I think you give him just a little bit too much credit into the actual application of those incredible cost cutting effort and everything. Like the widespread adoption of electric, Elon has had great timing with his companies too, and I think he sees the timing of self-driving right now and he's attaching Tesla to it for multiple reasons. And I know it's a bit ironic to say that Elon has good timing about self-driving, but I mean right now at least. But so I just don't see really the argument of like how does Elon change significantly the rollout of self-driving, especially considering that it's supposedly going to be adopted in the existing fleet too.
Okay, let's talk to Machine.
Tesla does not need Elon Musk for robotaxis. Tesla just needs to hire Kyle Voigt as CEO. Kyle has led an actual effort to release robotaxis in multiple cities. And under him, he can hire Mary Barra. Mary Barra has
Come
led.
Come on. We're having a serious discussion. We only have half hour left.
Mary Barra has
Come on. We have a lot of hands. Come on, let's go.
Led the EV revolution.
Okay, all right. Let's go to Wessex.
Yeah, I think full self-driving is going to happen no matter what. Barring World War III or some other things that are unrelated to our conversation. And Elon's confirmed that as well. And it wasn't in his interest to make that point. Real quick on a related thing, I think June 14th, the day after the vote, might be one of the best opportunities to purchase stock if it doesn't go through. In other words, if they vote against it for Musk. But one thing,
Okay.
Yaman, well, one thing real quick for you is you might want to do a bet on the volume trade on that particular day because it's going to be insane.
Okay. Grant.
Yeah, I was going to agree with something that Fred said. I feel like you're giving Elon credit for being great at controlling costs, but removing 20,000 people from Tesla because they represent excess fat inside the org is not actually the mark of someone who's good at controlling cost. Not hiring 20,000 people that you don't need is actually what an executive or a CEO who's good at controlling cost would do.
I would agree with that. People like to give Elon credit for everything that's good that's happening at Tesla and everything that's bad and everything that led to be bad. That's not his fault for some reason. It's so strange.
Well, I mean, I think we can all agree that Tesla had ambitious growth plans coming into 2024, but the macroeconomic situation turned out such that they had to scale back, and everybody else had to scale back as well. And so now there's a bit of a backpedaling going on with the hiring. So, Grant.
I'm sorry because I know I'm coming across as kind of negative now, but I also don't think it was the macro situation. Like it was a factor to be clear, but I mean, they didn't have a new product outside of the Cybertruck, which has been really challenging to ramp. Like that was their first new product in a long time. Prior new products haven't ramped, like Semi, Roadster doesn't exist. I mean, like I also think that the growth plans not panning out are certainly a reflection on Elon's leadership as well, not just the macroeconomic environment.
Or lack of leadership. See?
Machine.
Yeah, we can't blame macro only, as other people weren't affected the same. One other thing I would mention is, for instance, 4680, which they keep trying to convince us is a success when all the data coming out and articles are indicating that the dry battery electrode process is basically a failure. And they've wasted a lot of money on that. And maybe they would have made a decision earlier to cut bait if Elon was paying attention more.
Magic.
Hey, going to circle back to the comp package. So I think an important point is that Elon did hit the metrics for market cap and all the metrics. The issue here is about corporate governance. So they're pretty much saying that the board is not independent and that Elon exercises undue influence over decisions. Now, my question is, if that's the issue is not saying he didn't make money. That's not what the issue is. The issue is about corporate governance. So how is this vote going to address the corporate governance that is in question right now?
Fred.
It doesn't. It's as simple as that. And it's going to lead to, even if it passes, it's going to lead to other lawsuits. It's inevitable.
Well, it does in one way, right? So the concern was that the board misled shareholders, and that's why the shareholders voted for this package. This time around, there's a lot of disclosures. Everyone knows what's going on. It's been a hot headline issue for a long time. And if the vote still passes, that tells us something, right? That's new information. That's material information. Pennington.
Yeah, but can't the court just say different shareholder base? So why is it relevant? We're going to be paying Elon $45 billion for something that was voted for in 2018, but now you're saying because of 2024, shareholder base voted yes, that we should move forward with the 2018 vote. It just seems a little bit uncertain whether or not they'll even accept this. Kind of that's number one, but I would hold my shares regardless. Again, if everybody believes FSD is going to unlock trillions of dollars in value, and in August they're unveiling the robo-taxi, and hopefully this gets solved soon, Why does it matter whether or not Elon's there or not? And yes, they could lose some cash between now and then, but this thing unlocks multi-trillion dollars of value. Why does it matter who's leading it or not? Just specific to this one thing as relates to the valuation.
Okay. There's a comment on live chat, YouTube live chat that I want to read out because it's been raised here as well. That macro affects all of the makers. Why is everybody else is growing sales? But if you look at their inventory at dealerships, days of supply is increasing pretty rapidly for legacy automakers. And in fact, in April, auto sales came in lower than expected. So my guess, my estimate, my take on this is that Tesla, because it lacks dealerships, because direct to consumer is feeling these impacts quicker than legacy automakers. And I think legacy automakers are going to see increasing pain going forward throughout 2024. Grant.
Yeah, I was just going to say on the corporate governance topic, I feel like the fact that they're actually spending the company's money right now trying to push through votes to give Elon more money himself personally is all the indication you need that governance at Tesla is a massive problem. I feel like people talk about corporate governance and it's not well understood by some of the bulls. Like, this is not Elon's company. I know everyone associates him with it and he does own a stake in it, but it's not his business. Shareholders own it. It's a public company. The board is supposed to represent those shareholders, not just, let Elon do whatever he wants. I get frustrated by that sometimes.
You're a short seller, right? Shouldn't you want, I guess, according to you, to board to waste money?
No, I mean,
Listen, the fact is, the board, the board can make the argument that obviously this is the argument they're making, that Elon's leadership is important, critical to Tesla's future. That's why they're trying to explain these votes and get people to vote for. Like, that's a fair argument. I understand though the like, I see where you're coming from, and I understand a bit of a with the board composition, a conflict of interest a little bit, but duly noted. Bull 2035.
I feel like I'm in a suspended reality here. I could name 30 EV companies that have failed, none of which had Elon on top. Elon's battle tested and proven. I just, this idea that we can just put someone else there and everything will be fine is absurd. And my question to Fred is there a dollar amount? The stock is $175 right now. Is there a dollar amount of value in that 175 that you would attribute to Elon? And if so, how much?
That's kind of a ridiculous question. Like, I perfectly willing to admit that Elon contributed to Tesla's success in a big way. To put a dollar amount on it, like, I have no idea. Are you more asking, like, if Elon is not at a company anymore? Like, I know it was discussed a little bit earlier. I don't remember the exact percentage. Like, you think that I would think that the stock would drop or would go up? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we have a company that has survived and thrived with leader who's willing to do whatever it takes to survive and thrive. And apparently there's very few of them out there in this industry because every other EV company has failed, basically, or is in the process of failing. So my question is, what value does Elon provide? Because to me, it's well above what he's asking for in the compensation package. So I think you have to be willing to say, well, I think Elon is worth very little because here's the people that can replace him. Or you have to say, I don't know. And if you say, I don't know, I don't know how you can resolve
Can we let me ask Fred in a different way. Okay. That's not more like you. I feel like you're personally attacking a little bit. Like, I really want to limit that because this is a hot button topic. We have a lot of diverse groups. I understand the emotions, but let me just, like, you can't reword things to be less personal. So you can't say something like, Fred, if Elon leaves, who do you think would be in charge? Is there a clear second? And how do you kind of distinguish between the value that both of those people add?
Well, there's no clear second anymore. That's unfortunate. And that's because of Elon. I think he's creating kind of a void in leadership at Tesla, making more of a flat organization and making his the only one that's above everybody else. Well, obviously the CEO is like that, but there's no close second anymore. Like Tom is now back in China, Drew is gone. There's GB that might be interesting. Like now that he's back on the board, I don't know what kind of situation he's in. Obviously very busy with Redwood, but uh, I think Elon has value at Tesla. I first admit that I think he still has. I don't think he's well equipped to be the CEO of a public company, though. I think I'm pretty sure he would also agree to that.
Well, I wouldn't. I disagree with that. But let me ask you another question. Escaped my mind. Oh, Fred. So earlier, before you joined, we discussed, how to look at this vote, because there's an argument out there that I think is a fair one, that Tesla shareholders already voted on this, and Elon delivered his end of the deal. This is not about, even though, people are going to vote, a lot of people are going to vote with their emotions. When you break it down to it, it's more about, kind of delivering your end of the deal. That's already been done, completed. How do you think about that, Fred?
I think there's two ways to look at it from the a perspective of how do you justify voting against it with that perspective that he already delivered on the milestone. I think one, it's the judge perspective is that you cannot mislead investor into voting for something. So if you this is something that Elon fans have been having a tough time to understand because they don't feel like they have been misled. But the problem is that's okay. Maybe you don't feel like you've been misled. Maybe you don't see that you've been misled. I don't know which one it is, but if one shareholder has been misled by these proxy statement from Tesla, then the judge has to go that way. So there's this perspective. Then there's the other perspective of I think Grant just talked about it, the lack of governance at Tesla, which was also highlighted by the judge decision too, and the fact that the board is working more for Elon than for shareholders, for other shareholders, I should say. And there's really no way for us as shareholders to make our voice heard. And this happens to be a pretty good opportunity to do it with our shares. So a lot of people are taking it that way, which I understand there's an argument against that it's not right because it's not really what the vote is about. But if you have no other option, what are you going to do? So these are the two main way that I see good reasons to vote against it.
Okay. Stacy?
Hi, Aman. Hello. Okay, so first of all, just thanks for having me up. Just to answer Fred, if you have no other option, what do? You stay with your integrity and you do the right thing. Okay, number one. There are three things, A, they already voted on his package, right? This is for work already done. It's cut and dried. You don't change the wages or change the terms after the fact. That's awful. Number two, bad behavior. I keep hearing about bad behavior. That people are just stating Elon's this bad behavior over the last few years as if it were a fact. That's not a fact. What's the bad behavior? The fact that he's standing up for what he believes in, the fact that he's preserving free speech for the world, and he's speaking his mind. So that's not bad behavior. Other people would call that a role model and a hero. I do. Number three, void in leadership. Whoever said that, I'd like to know how. What has there been a void in leadership on Tesla? That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
How am I leaving behind my integrity if I vote no exactly?
Yeah, you are, because you're hijacking this vote and dishonestly using it for something that it's not meant to be. That's it.
Okay.
You
Let's
can
go
make,
to.
but you can make the argument the completely other way that Elon is the one that's using a public company where he's just a single shareholder in it, a big one to be fair, a co-founder, giving credit for that too. And he's using it like a private company, like his own family business, and discounting what other shareholders deserve, which is good governance. And the lack of governance at Tesla has been clearly highlighted by this decision. So yeah, I think it is the integrity move to make the message clear that this is not Elon's company, this is a shareholder's company, and we deserve good governance. So
Slavery was outlawed in this country, Fred. Slavery was outlawed in this country.
We have hands. Hold on, guys. We have hands up. Let's go one by one. Adam, did you have anything to say?
None on this topic, so I'll pass for now.
Okay, Pennington.
Elon used to be chairman of the board, but then he was forced to relinquish that title. And every day where I live in Colorado, I walk my dog, and I'm going to do it in a few minutes. A few blocks from here, I'm going to pass Kimbo Musk's restaurant. Now, I've been there. It's fine, and half of the restaurant just closed down. Wasn't doing well. So when I pass that, I got it to every time I pass it, I think to myself, what is this guy doing on the board? Now, I read the book, I've done my research, and I don't understand that. So it's certain things like that that really make me question the composition of the board, and then all decisions that have been made and that might still be made if this board is reelected as is.
Danny.
Yeah, do you want to stay in the like the board and that kind of topic? Because my topic's different.
What is your topic?
The future of FSD and robo taxis.
Okay, stay on the board. Stay on the speaker board. Let's kind of go through this fancy real quick. Grant.
Yeah, one thing that I do react to is when people say, oh, the honorable thing to do, the honest thing, the integrity move is to vote yes. I would just highlight that the reason that this vote is occurring is because the board, when they actually granted this package many years ago, did not behave honestly, did not behave with integrity, and functionally deceived the shareholders. I know everyone here disagrees with that, but that's what a lot of people believe, including, unfortunately, the judge in Delaware who
Yeah,
was
I don't know if you realize this, but we have more bears on the board right now than bulls. Okay, don't say like everybody agrees with this or that. This is a very diverse group. Please continue.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, it's just a point that that's not typically how people will think about things. And if you do want to view the entire, dilemma situation here through the lens of honesty and integrity, it really starts with the board not disclosing that actually this comp package was not really negotiated. Actually, we're basically doing whatever Elon wants because we're not acting in the best interest of shareholders. I mean, that was literally the decision that the judge made after hearing all of the facts and looking at precedent.
Magic.
Yeah, so just to expand on that, I think just to reiterate, this is not about, talking about if he hit if he hit the metrics, if he hit market cap, if he hit the stock price targets. That's not in question. What's in question here is corporate governance. So what the judge said is that Elon has undue influence on the board, and I think we've established that this vote that's coming up does not address the corporate governance issue. So my 2 cents is that if it doesn't address the main problem of why the other comp package was nullified, then there is a potential probability that even if the vote goes your way, that they can go vote against it because you didn't prove that.
Yeah, so the thing is, the board composition itself is not the main problem, according to the judge, right? It was disclosures. So now that's been addressed with this vote. So we're going to see the new results, given the disclosures that the judge said these should have been included in the first place. All right. Fred.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think the board is basically betting on shareholders approving both the new vote on the comp package and the move to Texas, which would nullify further litigation on that front. I think that's what they're betting on. Whether that's what's going to happen, I don't know. But what the clear message that they are sending, though, is that we don't see or we don't want to see that we have governance issues.
Yeah. And Fred, let me ask you a question. So earlier I said a statement that I think actually not only you, but most people disagree with that. I'm pretty sure that, like, looking at the financials, if Elon left, in the off chance that this vote didn't pass, that Tesla board couldn't make it right in some other way, and Elon decided to leave because he was concerned with control of AI and all that, I think that Tesla would become Rivian in 3 to 5 years, given the marginally positive free cash flow in the last 12 months, negative free cash flow in Q1, and the success of the company depends a lot on Optimus project. And I think even robotaxi mass adoption is going to require someone like Elon. So that's my view. Seeing what in the next few months, quarters, would make you agree with me?
I don't know what would make you. I don't know about that. Like, the thing is like I think autonomous driving is coming fast. Like, and as soon as it happens, it changed the industry so much that like there's going to be a lot of companies that's going to fall, and it's who's going to be able to capitalize more on self-driving. And I think Tesla right now is in the best position to capitalize on it, partly by Elon, because of Elon, but also I think Elon gave Tesla the liability on that front. Like, for example, like promising level 4, level 5 at some point to current Tesla owners, and it's not exactly clear it's going to be achievable on the current hardware of those cars. So I think it's more about that, like who's going to be able to capitalize more on autonomous driving in those next few quarters and next few years. And I don't know at this point how much Elon could help on that front. Like, I think he's a very strong vision guy, but like his vision is happening right now. Like, autonomous driving is going to change the industry completely in the next few years.
Okay. So I want to transition real quick to Elias Martinez. Elias has developed this website called TeslaFSDTracker.com that I visit almost daily. I recommend people go to his website and instead of just looking at the main page, dig into the dozens of graphs and data tables that he's developed over the last 2 years. I think that Elias has done an excellent job of developing that website. I think it's a great tool. And if you have FSD, reach out to Elias to see how you can contribute to this project. It's very important that we have a diverse set of FSD testers join Elias in this effort so that we can get statistically reasonable, statistically significant data. The more people join, the more quality data that's submitted to the website, the better the website is for everybody else who views it. And I think there are tens of thousands of people viewing this website now. So, Elias, would you like to tell us a little bit about what changes you made in the last month since you last came here?
Yeah, just the big reason or the big things I did recently was kind of bringing out some of the data points so you can filter and aggregate better, because before it was just kind of what you see is what you get, whereas now there's some filters that you can aggregate, for example, across 12.3.x of all the 12.3 versions. But you can also do comparisons to previous versions and stuff like that. But the other big change, I had a lot of people complaining about it, or I had a few people complaining about it, but basically looking at the data, there was occurrences of skewing the data for like long road trips and things like that. So I did some statistical analysis and we looked at trimming the top 10 and bottom 10 percentiles. So it's basically using the 10 through the 90th percentile. And then I ran some t-tests to compare the two groups. But I also did confidence intervals. So people that are heavy in statistics, there's a data accuracy tab now on the tracker. So if you wanted to see kind of a before and after of what the metrics look like, measurements of miles of disengagement, miles of critical disengagement.
That's awesome.
All that stuff is there.
That's awesome. I mean, this is excellent. I know you've been working closely with a couple of people who are, experienced in statistics, and I think your website is on track to become something very material for the community. Perfect. As a reminder, I started holding after-party live streams on Patreon. The link to that is at the top of your screen. This is patrons only. I want to make sure that they get their questions and thoughts heard. This is only about a half hour. This space is free and open for everybody. I don't block even one person, okay? And that's only possible because of my patrons. So if you'd like to become a patron, the link is at the top of your screens. Danny.
Yep. So Tesla is betting a lot about autonomous driving. So Tesla is betting a lot on this, and they will likely be the first to get it done. And then that will be millions of cars driverless, likely for years before someone else does it, but likely not decades. What do you think about when a company like Coma.ai gets it done? It could be tens of millions of older cars that become driverless and can do taxiing as well. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah. So personally, I don't think Comma AI. I think they have a really good ADAS solution, but to develop a fully autonomous driverless system, they have to have cameras all around. They have to validate every single update with millions of cars, and they just don't have that resource. I think Waymo is doing a better job than I expected, a much better job than Cruise did in scaling their solutions. They're now testing in Austin, for example. And I think Waymo will probably be in major cities, and that's going to be the primary competition, as well as human-driven Ubers for Tesla robotaxis. And I think it's going to take some time to scale. I think the software is getting really good, really well. If you want to track the software's progress, you can go to Elias's Tesla FSDtracker.com. But I think scaling it across the country with all the legal approvals and all the kind of setbacks that we're going to see for sure, and across the world, is going to be maybe a bit longer than people think. Fred?
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't agree with Danny's idea that Coma could quickly develop full self-driving because of the lack of hardware that goes with it. They need to have implementation with OEMs, but I do agree that they have a very great solution, and I think they won't be far behind because of their vision-based approach. Also, that they won't be far behind Tesla to develop self-driving software, but then they're gonna have to work with those OEMs to implement that in the car. So I think there will be some kind of competitor to Tesla in like competitor to Tesla licensing FSD with other automakers. But I don't think they can quickly deploy that in other vehicles like they do with their Coma One.
Thank you. Adam?
Yeah, this was a good conversation, but I just want to jump back just a little ways between the conversation between you and Fred. I want to push on them turning into Rivian. I agree with Fred that FSD is happening without Musk. And then I want to set that aside, and I want to talk about what's next on the car side of the business. Because if you get the Model 2 out and you get that, let's say, to 800,000 units a year, Model Y dips quite a bit. Model 3 might dip a little bit more. But you can increase margins on those cars. But you now have this low margin car that gets you to 2.5 million cars a year. How do we see that not happening without Musk? Because that was the conversation you guys were having before.
So this is, I mean, this
seems like
is
there's a healthy business.
This is great illustration of why I think Tesla would turn into Rivian, because of things like this. People say stuff like this that just makes no sense from a financial perspective. You think that the company, I will explain. You think that the company who has $45,000 of ASP, when they start producing a $25,000 car, their margins are gonna go up because of that? They generated $1 billion of marginal positive free cash flow in the last 12 months, negative free cash flow in Q1. Do you think bringing the $25,000 car to market is what's going to get them to next stage? People are obsessed with this $25,000 vehicle. Okay.
No, I think
Tesla is in no. Adam, you have to stay on mute when you're not talking in the space. This is why Tesla would turn into Rivian, because you need someone like Elon to say that's bullshit. Fred.
I might be mistaken here because I know that Adam mentioned like Model 2, but I think he meant the new smaller Model Y, Model 3 platform vehicles that are coming, which was Elon's move. So I think that, I might be mistaken there, but I think there's some miscommunication going on.
All right, it's 4 o'clock. I made a promise to myself that we're going to end this at 4 sharp every single day. It's been going on for 2 hours. I'm going to hop into the after hour. It's going to last about half hour. Tomorrow, we'll be back at 2 o'clock Central Time, same time. See you guys tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, and take care.